Hello and welcome to the Buy, Sell, Hold Spotlight presented by Sports Car Market Magazine. I'm Darren Roberge. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Also, be sure to join in the conversation and share your thoughts by leaving us a comment below. Our guest today is Ray Shaffer. He is a car specialist and brand ambassador for Broad Arrow Group. Welcome, Ray.
Thank you, Darren. It's great to be here with you today.
For those who may not know you, why don't you introduce yourself and talk about your background?
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate that very much. So, like most viewers, probably I'm a car guy, if you will, and have been involved from the very beginning of my life, I feel like. And, in the very beginning, I thought I was going to be working on cars, but realized I didn't have the talent in my hands to do so. So I was saved by the idea that I could actually talk to people and work in the sales and marketing side. And that became the direction that I went. And so long story short, 28 years on the retail side of the automobile business, before going to Porsche Cars North America, or on the wholesale side, if you will, where I was involved in Porsche Classic, in developing that program. I also curated the Heritage Gallery exhibits there for the visitors that came to the Porsche Experience Center in Atlanta. And then when my friends started developing Broad Arrow Group, I had a chance to consider, did I want to get back into the idea of what I like to do? And that's connecting fantastic people with fascinating cars. And so here I am. And that's kind of the short version of it. Love it all. Not only participated as my career, but also as a hobby on the vintage racing side, and been involved in that for a long time as well.
Your history with Porsche is very extensive, which actually kind of brings us to what we're going to talk about today. Porsche's 75th anniversary sale for Broad Arrow Group. What exactly are you guys doing in Atlanta? Kind of give us an overview of what this event is.
Well, it is the 75th anniversary, as you pointed out, of Porsche around the world. And so here at Porsche Cars North America, they'll be celebrating, of course. The year will end with Rennsport Reunion at the end of summer out in Laguna Seca. But the actual date itself, the anniversary falls over June 8th through the 10th. And so as part of that celebration, Broad Arrow Group is going to be hosting an auction at the home of Porsche in America, featuring Porsche-only vehicles, and a great variety at that. It's an idea that kicked off 5 years ago when the hotel was built right across the street from the headquarters of the Experience Center. And I looked at that and I thought, this reminds me an awful lot of what I would see at Amelia Island whenever I would go there every year, living in Jacksonville, of course. And so just had the conversation with the marketing department at the time and said, wouldn't it be great to really show folks what this place is all about, get people here that are really into cars, and to do that, bring in the car collectors. And so the idea for what was originally the 70th anniversary auction was born. That was a great weekend, set a few records there, had a lot of fun, and people got connected with some amazing cars. And so, of course, for the 75th anniversary, it seemed like it was time to do it again.
Yeah, it's certainly a fitting situation. And I imagine you were a great bridge between the two companies for that. So what exactly did it take to get this idea off the ground? Did you have to kind of resell this again to Porsche Cars North America? How did you bring Broad Arrow Group in? Like, give us sort of the timeline of the development of this sale.
Well, when we first did the 70th anniversary, it was a new idea. I mean, obviously Porsche retails all of their new cars through the authorized dealer network program, and of course, pre-owned cars as well. And they do a great job of it. But looking at collector cars specifically, it just was a different approach. And so we had the idea, we went through with it. The dealers were involved. They brought some cars to Simon, and, everybody came from all over the hobby, and it really took off from there. Kind of opened the door at Porsche, really. And since then, you've seen some great charity efforts that the company did with the Speedster during COVID, and others, Sally Carrera Special that was auctioned last year. So it kind of really opened the door for special opportunities. And of course, celebrating 75 years of a company like Porsche, that seemed like another great opportunity. So yeah, that's really how the timeline kind of worked out, how it got started. Not something we do all the time. But as a one-off every now and then, it sure is a lot of fun, and folks love it because you bring out some great examples of the brand, and just come together for a couple days of preview Thursday and Friday, and of course the sale on Saturday.
So what has the Porsche community's reaction been to this sale so far?
It's been really well received. I mean, we've got not only the collectors involved, but because of one of the specific assignments that are here, the Porsche Club of America, their members are also excited about it too. Looking forward to seeing what the Classic Club Coupe, which we can talk a little bit more about later, how that car will do, and then who actually becomes its next caretaker, or its first caretaker, I should say. in its new life.
Yeah, some pretty fascinating cars from this, and you guys are clearly curating this collection pretty effectively. So, how are you choosing cars? Like, aside from obviously the marque, on the trunk or the hood, what are you doing to choose these cars specifically? Is there certain criteria you're looking for to include these in the sale?
Well, obviously, you want to have a great variety because it is 75 years. When you think of the catalog that Porsche has developed over 75 years for such a small manufacturer to have the variety of cars, not just in the street cars, but also in the racing side of it as well. There's just so much variety. So all the specialists come together. We talk once a week as a team. Of course, individually, that goes on throughout the week and the weekends and just constant communication. And you're always vetting, what about this car? What about that car? Have you talked to so-and-so? If I've learned anything in my transition from the retail side of the car business to the auction side of it, it really is the auction side is such a team effort. Not only getting the cars to the auction, as you know, but having them sold then, going through the network, the people that I know personally, the people that my colleagues know personally, and vetting them that way. So there's really a lot of conversation. By the time we get to the catalog and you look at the cars that are in there, it's just such a team effort and the variety is amazing. I love that part of it. I really do.
Yeah, it's a fascinating component of the auction experience for sure. I mean, people don't really necessarily understand or realize what kind of behind the scenes magic it takes to bring these cars to the forefront. So let's get to it. Let's talk about some of the cars that are in the forefront on this sale. And we'll start right at the top here. 2004 Porsche Carrera GT, very unique car, uniquely refinished by Porsche North Houston, in a speedster blue to sort of commemorate the 356A pre-speedster. U.S. market example, 2,200 miles on it, documented service history with a clean Carfax, and includes a 5-piece luggage set with a dark gray leather. Full body paint protective film is applied. It's, considered by many the finest analog supercar of the 2000s, of course, with the wonderful sounding naturally aspirated V10 and a manual transmission. Give us a rundown on this car. What's the story here?
Well, as you pointed out, it was refinished by Porsche Classic Partner, one of the specially authorized dealerships that Porsche has on the classic side of the business, that side of the business where I was involved in. This program that really kind of kicked off back at the 70th anniversary auction, we had premiered the first full recommission of the cars at the factory. There's so far just that one. It takes a very long time to do. And so the idea was picked up, obviously, in this case here with one of our Porsche Classic partners to refinish the exterior of the car and the wheels and interior, it appears. And in this sort of bespoke color combination, when the Carrera GTs were introduced, they were not a limited production, but the variety of what you could order back then was rather limited as well. So I think it's really neat today to see the level of the extent to the refinishing that these cars are getting in the case of the Classic Partner, like this particular example, or the full recommission that Porsche Classic Factory Restoration does. But as you pointed out, hard to top an analog car like a Carrera GT.
It's amazing to me if you look back at some of the reviews when that car originally came out and it was new, like the critics kind of panned it a little bit. And they did that with the LFA too. And you kind of think about how important to sort of supercar history and culture these two cars are now. And again, they are widely considered to be the last of the era. It's amazing that they were looked at the way that they were in period, but I guess that's kind of some of the lore now is limited production because people didn't buy them.
Yeah, look at that's right. And of course, you might remember too that the production numbers, because it's a change of the airbag law that we had here in the United States, they had to accelerate the production. It was coming to the States and then switch that out the following year for the European market. And so they ended up producing less than they had intended. But yeah, obviously look at the values of where they are today and they are coveted. There's no question about it.
Yeah, no doubt. From one brand new pretty blue Porsche to one very old pretty blue Porsche. This is sort of the, the muse to a certain degree for the previous car. 1953 Porsche 356A pre-A 1500 coupe. Single family ownership since the early 1960s. Finished in original paint color of azure blue with gray corduroy interior. Matching numbers engine. A copy of the Cardex is included with warranty document, Porsche technical certificate, et cetera, et cetera. Recent restoration by marque experts, and it's completed to AACA national prize winning standards. It's been shown all over the place. Well-known car. AACA award winner, nominated for 2018, 2019. You kind of have to have both, I feel like. If you're going to buy the Carrera GT in blue, you kind of need the bookend version of the pre-A 356. What are your thoughts here?
Well, I do like your thinking. There's no question about it. So I would definitely say yes to that. This color, I actually posted about this on Instagram. This color on this 356, for me, I think that's like the ultimate color for a 356. It just looks so right. There's a Continental that's in the Ingram collection. It's the same color. And I mean, it just is amazing. And when I saw this car and then the history that you just read off, I mean, what more can you ask for in a 356 to add to your collection than what you just described in this particular example? It's stunning to look at, and its history and everything that it represents today. Outstanding.
Another outstanding example that you have, very unusual car, 1971 Porsche 914-6. It's an M471 competition option. One of just 23 of these produced that are equipped with this option from the factory, restored to its original delivery specification, including color, and a 1 year only black leatherette interior. It's been displayed again all over the place. All the Porsche places have seen this car. It's a well-known vehicle and it includes factory toolkit, correct footrest, spare keys, recent service, include oil change, new filter, and a full detail. I remember a time not that long ago where obviously this one's a little bit different, but these were like $5,000. That day is over. What is the pre-auction estimate on this car?
This one, I think we've got is 525 to 550.
What a world we live in.
Days,
yeah.
525,000 to 550 is the estimate range. But who knows? I mean, as you pointed out, the factory only made 23 of them. And, this was when Porsche was working to homologate the car for racing, as they do with a lot of their models. So there were kits that I understand some dealers, would install or customers would install afterwards. But when you get down to the documentation and you have one that's actually done by the factory like this one, I mean, this is a really special example too. When we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the 914 model at the home of Porsche in America inside that Heritage Gallery that I mentioned, this was one of the cars that was there. It represented the 914-6. And to have those flares to represent the look of the 914-6 GT, I mean, frankly, they should have all looked that way in my opinion. But this one ticks all the right boxes.
Yeah, I'm sure this is an astonishing car to drive. Lots of fun, and will be a centerpiece in anybody's collection who's serious about Porsche, no doubt. Very cool. Another car that will be a centerpiece for somebody, most certainly, car that you referenced earlier, 1999 Porsche 911 Classic Club Coupe. Factory one-off vehicle, highly collectible, one of one, and it was inspired by the design of the 2010 Sport Classic and 2022 911 Sport Classic. But it's a 996, which is pretty interesting and pretty cool. There's a lot going on with this car. You're going to understand way more about this than I will, certainly. How does this car exist? What is it? Why is it? And who does it appeal to?
Okay, so great question. And yeah, this is one of those ones where I was on both sides of the fence with this one. When this project started, I was over at the PCNA, and I remember the origins of it at the Porsche parade, where Vu Nguyen and the directors from the PCA were talking about a project. They did a project previously with Porsche Classic. Now that Porsche Classic was bringing Sonderwunsch back, which of course, Special Wish, that program that was really prominent more in the 70s and 80s. The idea started being kicked around. Well, what could we do this time? And, Vu is a fan of the 996, as am I, and a lot of people. It's a great driving car. I mean, I remember selling the air-cooled versus the water-cooled when we were making the transition back in the day at Brumos Porsche. And it's a wonderful car. And so it's like, well, let's do something there. And so the idea quickly became, what if there would have been a predecessor to the 997 Sport Classic that we never received here in the United States? Well, what the PCA didn't know at the time was that Porsche was working on the new Sport Classic model, that there was going to be another one. And so the idea of creating this predecessor really gained traction through all that. And so, yes, Grant Larson, director of special design projects at Porsche, got involved and really created the look along with the club, bringing in the Club Blau exclusive accents that are inside the car, and completely did a full restoration on the car. He started with a 1999 911 Coupe, a U.S. car, and completely tore it down and built it into that vision. And I mean, this car even had its own test development vehicle, so that when the ducktail aerodynamics were made for this one-off car, that test vehicle went into the Weissau wind tunnel and was tested. Now, how many body kit pieces and what have you that get their own test development car like that. So, I mean, pretty impressive the extent of attention to detail that Porsche put into this car. And so now whoever wins this auction on that day, the car is going to sell because it's offered at no reserve. When it sells, whoever ends up with that car is going to have the unique opportunity, only person in the world that could potentially own all three cars. Only one collector can do that. When you think about what that means, I think that's pretty special.
Yeah, it's incredibly cool for sure. And I'll tell you, we spend a lot of time talking about 996s on this show. Easily one of the most buy-recommended cars that our guests come on here and talk about on a regular basis. And again, I mean, great driving cars. They have the analog feel that you want. They do everything you want. But this car is so special. And the question begs then, is this the ultimate 996? And I think the answer to that is quite likely yes. And number two, what would somebody expect to pay for the privilege of owning this car, in your opinion?
Well, that's a tough one to say because the car is a one-off, and I hadn't even mentioned that when they did the engineering of the aerodynamics, that also included the driveline being fitted with the 996.2 GT3 power plant and suspension pieces and what have you. So having been one of the few people to actually drive it, I can tell you it is an amazing car. So yeah, perhaps from an ultimate standpoint. But to answer your question, that's really a tough one to put a range on. I think that, from an estimate standpoint, we'll probably look at the fully optioned price of a new Sport Classic, which is just about $292,000, if I'm not mistaken, and say, let's say somewhere in that range. But let's see where it goes, because again, it's only going to be one person. And that's, again, the part that I really like about the auction world. You just don't know. It's going to be fun. I know that much.
Yep. There's only one. And if there's two bidders that have it, I mean, the sky's really the limit on this thing for sure. It's incredibly cool. Another very cool later model Porsche that you guys have, 2018 911 GT2 RS. Why such package? It's got the chalk over black with the red Alcantara interior. These are the things that blow me away on these cars, is the options that you can check off and just make the price go north at an alarming rate is incredible. $31,000 weight reduction package on this. Includes $13,000 forged magnesium wheels, tons of additional options on this car, including front axle, lift dashboard trim package in leather. It's got a Bose surround system, single owner, unmodified. Why would you need to modify it? Clearly, Porsche's already taken care of that for you. December 2021 oil change, full brake fluid flush from Porsche Plano. It's got a 700 horsepower twin turbo flat six. This thing is a weapon. Who's this car for?
Well, I've been to quite a few days, track days, private, public, you name it. And, you see these cars out there and they get driven to the track. They get driven hard and they get driven home. And I mean, in a way, it really kind of fits what race cars used to be back in the 50s and 60s, where you can drive them to the track, race them, and then drive them home. And these cars, you do with the air conditioning on and the stereo going. And I mean, you do have all the luxuries. To your point, I remember when you were going to do a track car, you tried to take all that off the car. And here we are, it's all in there. Of course, race cars nowadays have air conditioning and what have you. So we're kind of to that point. But these are just amazing cars to drive. And I mean, if you have something like this, you definitely want to take it and try it at least like that. You don't have to take it to its full limit, but just to be able to experience the acceleration coming off the corner in something like this GT2 RS, phenomenal. Just phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, race it on Sunday and drive it to work on Monday. I mean, you're a winner pretty much no matter what you do in this thing. You got a couple cars that you probably can't drive to work. I mean, I guess it depends on where you live. Some cool competition stuff in this for sure. We'll start with the 1987 Porsche 944 GTR Fab car. It is the final example of 8 of these 944 GTRs constructed and the only example built to IMSA specifications. 4-cylinder, 2.5 liter turbocharged engine producing around 575 horsepower, which is great. Delivered to the right people, tested for the right reasons. Raced in IMSA GTO between 88 and 1990. And it had some results too. It was 6th in Lime Rock, 9th in Mid-Ohio in 1988. Prior service and maintenance conducted by marque experts again. And it's got a spares package, including a fresh engine, wheel set, and more. It's been a participant all over the place. Of course, Rennsport, Daytona HSR Vintage Racing, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, this is pretty plug and play on this one. You hop in this thing and you're pretty much ready to go at virtually any of these sort of retro events that are around the country. What are your thoughts on this car?
Yeah, again, I mean, being a celebration year, of course, Porsche, there's always welcome at great events. But being the 75th anniversary, you look at events like Rennsport and Velocity Invitational that happens out west, the Monterey Historics. You mentioned HSR. I remember these cars from the 1980s, and yeah, this was the only one built to IMSA spec. There were others that raced over in the SCCA, the other sanctioning body, if you will, in the Trans Am series. And I just remember these cars. Being a Porsche guy in the 80s, as I am today, I had such high hopes, for seeing these cars up against those Roush Mustangs and those big American V8 cars and what have you. They're just so good looking. I mean, those BBS basket weave wheels, that paint scheme that's on there, that livery, they're icons of the 80s. And yeah, you can take these out. And when you look at the estimate range on that car, 175 to 225. I mean, that's a lot of car for the money. And it's a piece of Radwood racing era history, if you will. And I love that.
Arguably, maybe even more iconic than that, 1988 Porsche 944 Turbo Cup car, one of 38 built Canadian Rothmans Porsche cars. That literally, for a certain group of people, is super, super iconic. And this car demonstrates that, certainly. It's an unraced example. It was sold to its first private owner in 1990, retains original matching numbers, engine, and transaxle, tamper-proof lead seals still affixed. Very, very cool. Currently presented in the correct, the period correct Canadian Rothmans Porsche livery. Why would you do it any other way? The lightweight factory-built race car, tested and sorted, and it's ready to enjoy for somebody. Again, another example of a car that you can pretty much take and do anything with.
You really can. I mean, this is an example because they're showroom stock racing cars. If the car, had a fully executed title, which my understanding was the Canadian cars were also through the dealerships, even though those cars were produced specifically for that series, they were ordered as factory built lightweights without the sunroof, no air conditioning, no back seats, everything specified specifically for it. A lot of it looks like standard 944. You take the telephone dial wheels, for example, they look like the cast aluminum wheels that the road car would have, but these are magnesium. Now you look at the intake manifold on the car, that's magnesium. The hood is fiberglass. I mean, there's a lot of lightweighting going on here. It's factory built lightweight special. And with a fully executed title like that means you could register them for road use. So yeah, so if you don't want to go vintage racing, you can go do a rally. You could do a mountain drive, one of those sort of vacation type trips with it, and have a car that's got factory built history, which I think is super cool. And we can talk more about that a little bit later when we get to the buy, sell, and hold part.
Yeah, it's an incredibly cool car, no doubt. Lots of cool cars involved in this. Again, recap where this sale is and when it is and how people can get involved.
Yeah, so this is the Porsche 75th anniversary auction at the Porsche Experience Center, Atlanta, right by the airport. I know a lot of people travel through that every year. It's June 8th through 10th, and it's going to be 2 days of preview with the sale happening on Saturday. You can find more information about it at broadarrowauctions.com. And there'll also be more information too on the Porsche driving website as well.
Certainly a can't miss event for Porsche fans of all types. Another upcoming event that you guys have that's a can't miss as well. Monterey Jet Center auction, August 17th through 18th during Monterey Car Week. Why don't you kind of give us an overview of that?
Yeah, that event is coming in August. It'll be the second time now. It'll be 1 year for Broad Arrow. That's when they first launched the brand, was last year at the Monterey Jet Center, which is also part of the Haggerty Motor Lux event. And so that will be happening again this year. The consignments are starting to come in already. And one in particular really caught my attention, having spent some time at a Cadillac dealership. There is a V16 aerodynamic coupe that'll be offered there as well. One of the early consignments. So just phenomenal machine. Looking forward to getting out there for that this year.
Yeah, it's a good time last year. I'm sure it'll be a good time this year, and lots of interesting cars on the way, I'm sure. So we know what you're doing in June. We know what you're doing in August. So what kind of upcoming options? What are the future plans for Broad Arrow that we can kind of we can talk about now?
Well, typically we've got the auctions that everybody knows about at Amelia and at Monterey. We just talked about. We have the Porsche auction, obviously, as a special this year. There will be something we'd like to do in the fall, winter time. Haven't made an announcement yet. Still looking at some options for that. So I would think that number somewhere between 3 to 4 per year, like that, is the direction to go. And so we're working on that right now, but nothing to announce, but definitely in the works.
So where do you think that this goes over the next couple of years with Broad Arrow? Are you guys planning to kind of have like a steady slate of like 3 to 4 auctions a year? Are you planning to expand? Are there more areas that you're looking to go into? What's on the horizon for Broad Arrow down the line?
Well, a lot of growth is happening. That's part of what excited me about joining Broad Arrow from Porsche. And you look at what's happened recently, the continental European expansion is happening. Bastian Voigt was brought on board, and he's had an incredible network and business himself in Europe and, of course, through the UK. So that continental European expansion is happening. The team works on private sales, as you pointed out, the global auction business. So I think you're going to see a lot of developments in that. There's a lot to do. And that's on the Broad Arrow side. We're also very involved on the Hagerty marketplace side, with the Broad Arrow specialist being involved in the growth of that business as well. So there's a lot of work going into that, because there's a great opportunity when you look at the amount of people that Hagerty works with, the number of members that they have in the Hagerty's Drivers Club, the number of cars that they insure. I think the number is somewhere like around 2.5 million insured members and what have you. So there's a lot of opportunity there to connect the dots between the need that's there as well as the media side to make it visible, to show the opportunity that's there, to have fun with it. And I think of cars like that 944 that you mentioned, and you look at Radwood and sort of the up and coming generation, people like ourselves, really, that you start to see those cars remember. So a lot of opportunity there. I think that's where you're going to see the growth and the opportunity as we move forward.
Okay, Ray, you're obviously a very experienced guy, lots of time on the new car side as well as the classic car side, and as a racer as well. So you know the market as good or better than anyone. So why don't you give us one car to buy, one car to sell, and one car to hold in today's marketplace?
All right, Darren, let's do it. So for me, the buy, and I say this with all conviction because I've just recently done it myself, I like these 944 Turbo Cups. For the money, I mean, again, talking about such a limited production, factory built, lightweight special, where can you buy them for this type of money? You look at the one that we talked about that's going to be offered at the Porsche 75th anniversary auction. The range on that one right now, the estimate is 150 to 175. And having bought one and prepared for HSR myself, I know that's a realistic range. These are incredible cars. However, mine, not quite to the quality level that this one is on offer. As you pointed out, this is a not raced version. I've seen this particular car. I've driven it. I've been under the hood, and I mean, it presents itself like a showroom new car. It is amazing. But I think they've got a long way to go yet, because again, this is a Radwood era car. The generation is just starting to get in. You see the appreciation for that. We had an Acura Integra Type R that set a world record at the Amelia sale. So, I mean, if that doesn't give you an indication of where we're headed, I don't know what does. But for me, I think if I could buy, and I personally did last fall, then these 944 Turbo Cups are a great way to go.
And what are we selling?
Well, to the same generational conversation, I think we have to look at 356 models, since we're staying in the sort of Porsche world. And great cars are always great cars. And I think that, if you're going to have a cornerstone collection, definitely you're going to want to have something like that. But as you look at sort of like just the overall use, it's just a generational shift that starts to happen. And I think that for us, obviously, is the beginning at Porsche. And so maybe right now, if you've had that for a long time and you started out, maybe now's a good time to sell one.
And what are we going to hold?
Well, keeping with the transaxle theme, I think that because the 944 Turbo Cups and the Radwood era cars are starting to come, I think that some of the really special cars, like some of the racing versions, you take the 924 Carrera GTS, the Club Sport, let's say, where they only made 15 of them. I think those cars have a lot of opportunity yet. So, that's the type of thing too, where maybe the time isn't exactly spot on. I mean, I don't know, it's really hard to say, but I just think that, there's still some future yet for those cars, as the understanding and the education of where they fit start to meet up with the people that already know that. I think that's, I think there's going to be some day yet to come for those cars. So I'm excited about that too. Even the more produced 924 Carrera GT model, you don't necessarily have to go as rare as a Club Sport, let's say. And then of course there's the 928s these cars, those are other ones that, to my eye, they just seem to become better looking the older they get. And I think it all has to do with proportion and reference. Back in the 70s, they were pretty big cars, but you look at them today next to a 911 and or a modern 911, and they look pretty small.
It's amazing how much bigger cars have gotten than they were before, for sure. I mean, there's no doubt. There's definitely a lot of places to play in the Porsche sandbox, for sure. I mean, kind of any direction you want to go, that the marque offers that, and you guys will be representing pretty much all that stuff at your sale coming up. Any final thoughts?
This is just a great time to be an enthusiast. I mean, wherever you sort of slot in, whatever model, whether it's Porsche, otherwise, there's so many events to do. It seems like every weekend you could be busy. The friends, the community that's out there with it. I just love being involved. You don't have to be a racer to appreciate that. But again, wherever you want to insert yourself into the hobby, I think it's a great way to do it. If you don't already have the piece you want to do it with, then by all means, come out to one of the Broad Arrow auctions. We certainly can help you with that. And we're having a marketplace, and we look forward to it.
And once again, remind everybody where they can go to learn more.
I would go to barrett-auctions.com. Everything's in there, from the upcoming auctions to the lots. Eventually, the full digital catalog will be there. And you can even watch the live stream and bid online when the auction runs.
Good stuff indeed. Should be an exciting sale and a great summer for Broad Arrow Group. I would like to thank Ray Shaffer for joining us today. To learn more about anything that we discussed here, be sure to pick up the latest issue of Sports Car Market Magazine by visiting the link in the video description down below. As a reminder, if you enjoyed this content, please take a moment to like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay on top of future episodes. I'm Darren Roberge, and thank you for joining us on the Buy Sell Hold Spotlight.